So there might be 2 recordings of this. Let's go on to the animals now, chapter 32. All right. Finally, we get animals all semester long. It's kind of like a kid with Christmas. I wait all year to talk about, or all semester to talk about the animals. My favorite of all the organisms out there. And I know I've said that a million times, but I mean, this is what was my first fascination. Speaking of I love snakes. That's such a cool background there. You know what's in the square things? I mean, you may know who the animals are, but look how they look like such clean-cut kids. That's funny. They were probably all doing LSD and smoking dope and everything back then. It's like the Beatles. Does anybody know what used to come in these square cardboard things? I'm kind of being facetious there. I don't even know if anybody listens to these anymore, right? Records. Like nobody even listens to CDs anymore. Yeah, floppy. I finally got rid of my records a couple years ago. My wife's like, you gotta stop toting those things around. I'm like, I haven't had a record player in 15 years, so I figured I might as well get rid of it. All right, let's talk about what makes an animal an animal. All right. What is it? What's this? I don't know why it's highlighted. Oh, there we go. All right. An animal. All right. First thing about an animal is how they get their food, right? And we talked about this back in the prokaryotes, the different way you can do that. Remember the prokaryotes have those ways of like getting food out of iron, like the hull of the Titanic and those really bizarre ways. You know, but us animals, we're for the most part chemoheterotrophs. So we get our energy as well as our source of carbon from organic molecules, right? We eat food, those are organic molecules, we get our energy from that. And the carbon we use to build up, you know, animal molecules or cells, we get that from our food as well. That's what makes us a chemoheterotroph. Now, all semester long, I've been talking about this thing of multicellularity, right? And I've been sort of hedging, going, yeah, you know, multicellularity in tissues, it's sort of a gray area where one becomes the other. Remember the Volvox? The Volvox I asked you in lab to figure out, or at least give me an idea of whether you think it's a collection of cells or a loose aggregate or, you know, a multicellular cells. And the reason why I've been sort of vague on that definition is because where does one thing end and the next begin? Even some animals we're going to learn about, for example, the sponges, the poriferans, they're really not, they're more of a loose collection of cells. So even though we think about animals as being the ones that really sort of took multicellularity to the next level, what I mean by that is coming up with these functional tissues. And yes, technically plants have tissue, cambium, bark, all that kind of stuff, xylem, phloem. Those are all technically tissues, right? But it was the animals that really came up with these unique and really novel types of tissues, these structural and functional units that sort of took this idea of multicellularity to the next level. Like, for example, in the picture you're looking at there in the middle, this is a muscle cell, and this is a nerve cell. And right there where that sort of triangular, that is the neuromuscular junction. See that? So that's right in the spot. Isn't that a cool picture? That's right in the spot where the electrical impulse from your nervous system attaches to the muscle and tells the muscle to twitch. Right there. That's what I mean about biology and among animals. When you look at the tissues, this incredibly sophisticated dance of chemistry that's working here, right? So that's what I mean about, even though tissues can be used to refer to things before we get to the animals, holy cow, the animals took that to the next level. Nervous tissue, muscular tissue, endocrine tissue, you know, hormones, things that were only at the relatively basic levels in organisms before we got to animals, right? Now, we don't have cell walls, which means we got to have a skeleton of some type, either inside or outside, like an exoskeleton. You could also have a hydrostatic skeleton. A hydrostatic skeleton is what you would feel if you put your finger over the end of a garden hose when the water's on. The hose stiffens up behind it. That's what worms would use, a hydrostatic skeleton, if you will. So it's not really a structure. It's more of a law of physics, I guess. So you got to have some way to stand up against the force of gravity, right? So you got to have this ability to do that. You don't have cell walls like plants do. You don't have chitinous cell walls like fungi do. But the advantage of not having cell walls is flexibility. And one of the other big characteristics that we associate with animals is the next one on the list: movement, right? Active, not turning towards the sun, what plants do, but active, complex movement. Relatively rapid, even though a sloth ain't all that fast, or a snail. And even though some animals are more sessile or sedentary, so not all of them exhibit this movement thing. Although many of them, I'm trying to think of the exceptions, and I can't think of one off the top of my head, but even those animals that are sessile or sedentary, like coral. Coral is a jellyfish. In its reproductive stage, it's not. In its reproductive stage, it'll be mobile. It floats through the water. So, many times animals that end up settling down, barnacles are the same way, have larval stages that can move. So they can disperse for reasons that we've talked about. So they can flap their little wings like the butterfly. Now, one more thing, and I'll finally get off tissues. I like this picture here because this picture showed this is animal cells getting ready to just finish up with mitosis, right? This is cytokinesis. I hope you knew that. See all the little stringy stuff everywhere? That's a protein that you learned about in Bio 1 called collagen. Now, collagen is unique to animals. Collagen is that special substance that made the difference when it came to tissues, right? We talked about the importance of tissues, the complexity, but what it was physically was that stringy collagen protein that's in the extracellular space around the cells that allowed these animal cells to bind together. So not having cell walls, collagen was what animal cells came up with. And again, that's what allowed these cells to get together and form these tissue units. Again, just a simple molecule, right? Something that we may not, where would we find collagen in our bodies? Showed you, or asked you, I couldn't show you, but if I asked you to give me an example of where you might find collagen, where do you find that? It demonstrates, if you know where, one of the unique properties or one of the basic properties of collagen. Nobody knows? Is there collagen in hair? Yeah, I think there's some collagen in hair. What is a unique property of collagen, or what? Maybe not unique, but what is a property of collagen? Like, for example, you have collagen in your earlobes, in your lips. Your skin has collagen. People who smoke destroy the collagen in their skin, and that's why their skin falls. It looks. Of course, when you get old, that does it too. Yeah, flexibility. It's stretchy. So collagen, that sticky, stretchy stuff, is what binds these animal cells together. You see? Isn't that cool? Can't imagine injecting it in my lips. Those folks that inject collagen or beef collagen in their lips, just kind of gives me the willies thinking about it. But that got to be painful. It's like I see people get their lips, pierced. I have ear piercings, but man, I tell you, the one in the lip that just looks like that would bring tears to your eyes. Or like my dad used to say when I was younger, get in my eyes like onions. Oh gosh, where do I start when it comes to diversity of form? I mean, maybe that's one of the things I'd love. I love differences, okay? So maybe that's one of the things I love about animals. There's the little millipede, and if you're wondering how to tell a millipede from a centipede, we'll discuss that. There's little ones, there's big ones, there's microscopic animals. A rotifer, for example. Rotifers, you need a microscope to see a rotifer. They're one of those critters in drops of pond water. We'll talk about rotifers later. But rotifers are actually animals. They're not protozoans. They're truly animals. 8 million species, 35, 40 phyla. Many phyla only found in the ocean. For example, this guy here, sea stars. Sea stars, this is a brittle star. sea cucumbers, sand dollars, sea biscuits, sea urchins, all these critters are only found in the ocean. There are no terrestrial versions of them. The chameleon with its cool tongue. Have you ever seen in slow-mo where it catches that insect out of the air? That's just amazing. I'd love to have those eyes too, right? Looking in different directions. Now, the lizards that we have here in Florida oftentimes are mistakenly called chameleons. Lots of reptiles can change color. Chameleons can do it, but those lizards are not chameleons. They're anoles, A-N-O-L. Anoles, green anoles and brown anoles, and they can switch color. Although the green ones are the only ones that can look real green. The brown ones can look a little greenish more. Fast or slow sexual reproduction tends to be the norm. I remember once I was at the zoo in San Diego when I was in the Navy, and the Galapagos tortoises, one of them was mating, and it was disgusting because all these people were gathering around and just yelling obscene things to these poor reptiles. And I'm thinking, they got a little reptilian brain, but they must have been thinking, oh my God, can I get a little privacy here? And remember what I've been saying about sexual reproduction, okay? The idea that in the biological level, at the very basic level, what sexual reproduction is genetic mixing, right? To contrast that with asexual. This is how most animals do it. We don't do that alternation of generation thing, though, right? We don't have that haploid, or I'm sorry, we don't have that multicellular haploid. Sperm and egg are unicellular. We'll talk a little more, but animals have this very unique form of development, this very unique form of embryonic development. So you see right there, we're in the 8-cell stage in that picture down below. We'll talk about that. This is going to include the discussion where we are going to talk about stem cells and how you end up going from a zygote, which is a one cell with one set of genetic information, to all the multicellular multi-cells that you are, and all of them doing different things and forming those tissues. Oh, speaking of sexual reproduction, that picture there is an albatross. Albatross wingspan can approach like 6 feet. They're great gliders. Found down around the Southern Ocean, down around Antarctica. And one of the things I think is cool that I've read about albatross is, of course, the females land on the land and lay eggs. These are fish-eating birds, so they spend a lot of the time out over the water looking for fish. But many males rarely, if ever, touch ground after taking to flight, after first learning how to fly. The reason being is because albatross can mate in the air. So while the female may land to have to lay the eggs, theoretically, males could spend their entire lives doing nothing but gliding over the water, diving down in and catching fish, maybe even floating on the water sometimes, but not actually touching land. I think what a cool life. My love of the ocean. I think, man, I could easily dig a life where I spend all the time at sea. Folks, I'm gonna stop right there. I've got some other things to talk about, but I'd rather kind of do it in a cohesive section in class. So we'll do that next week when we get together. We'll finish up 32. We'll do our first animal lab too next week. So yeah, absolutely, Dustin. Being at sea is much good for you. It does a lot good for you. All right, so if there's not any questions for me, folks, you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you later. If you have any questions, by all means, stick around, and I'll be happy to answer them. Work on those field notebooks.